8:36 AM 560 traffic center time, and Jim Telemonte.
The inbound Eisenhower is shut down right now between Wolf and Mannheim due to a major wreck. We see a solid backup starting at North Avenue. Before that, there are some delays as well from 390 to Mill Road. Outbound, there's a big Gapers delay. It is an hour and 27 minutes downtown Chicago to 390. On the inbound Kennedy, we see a high travel time as well. It is an hour and 10 minutes, so O'Hare to downtown much quicker in the Express. Stevenson, brutal, an hour and 42 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. There are major wrecks farther south, southbound at 30 and northbound 1 at 52 has cleared. Ryan, 45 minutes, 95th to downtown. Northbound Lakeshore Drive is a mess. Randolph to the Oak Street curve, the truck going off the road. I'm Jim Telemonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Very cold today. Clouds giving way to sunshine. High 26. Clear to partly cloudy and 19 overnight. A much milder day tomorrow. A high of 44. It's 15 degrees at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Retire Chicago. Tune in Saturday mornings at 8 to Retire Chicago with John McNamara of McNamara Capital.
When you've got questions, he always has an answer. It's Sean Hannity, this afternoon at 2 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Let's talk about abuse of power. President Trump did yesterday at his rally in Hershey. He talked about how the abuses of power of the left have made the Trump administration stronger politically.
They knew right at the beginning that it was all a frame-up, a setup. But they hid it so that nobody could see it, so they could keep it going on, thinking they were going to hurt us politically. But now we're stronger politically than we were ever before.
Carter Page, one of the people that I think it's fair to say was treated unfairly, at minimum, in this process by the FBI, writing an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal asking where he goes to get his reputation back, a la Ray Donovan from the 80s.
But he still doesn't have a permanent residence because he's fearful, because they had hate messages and people were after him, and he was being spied on.
He writes, "My experience should be a warning. For 3 years, I've opened myself up to more than 40 hours of interrogation without a lawyer, including full days of questioning before the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and by Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team. After all this testimony and after more than a year of round-the-clock surveillance under FISA warrants, I've never been charged with any crime. If senators don't demand answers, they're practically inviting intelligence agencies to use their surveillance powers to target domestic political opponents." And that's the same thing Rand Paul cautioned about on Cavuto yesterday.
This doesn't bode well for our country. You know, they say in such serious tones that this threatens democracy. Well, what really threatens democracy is that if we're going to impeach every president that comes along because we don't like their tone or we don't like their demeanor or we think they're not courteous. So I think these are things that should be taken care of at the ballot box. I really, the things I'm concerned about are people like Adam Schiff using subpoena power to actually get the phone records of a fellow congressman. I think that's obscene, and I think really he ought to be censured for it.
Some pretty serious stuff, but always there's moments of levity during President Trump's rallies when he talked about, the violations from the FBI and that relationship between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page.
Is texting about an insurance policy. Let's have an insurance policy. Remember? Peter Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. Remember? Lisa, I love you so much. Lisa, please. Lisa, I've never loved anyone like you. We won't allow this to happen to our country. Lisa, please, tell me you love me, Lisa. I love you. Peter, I love you. I love you like I've never loved anyone. And if for any reason she loses, even though she's a stone-cold, corrupt person, if for any reason she loses, Peter, we've got to have an insurance policy. We have to do it. Because we're going to go, and that's what's been happening for the last 2.5 years, okay? It was their phony insurance policy. So FBI lawyer Lisa Page, so in love that she didn't know what the hell was happening, texted the head of counterintelligence, Peter Strzok, likewise, so in love he couldn't see straight. This poor guy, did I hear he needed a restraining order after this whole thing to keep him away from Lisa? That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. The fake news will never report it. But it could be true. No, that's what I heard. I don't know. I mean, who could believe a thing like that? No, I heard that Peter Strzok needed a restraining order to keep him away from his once lover. Ah, Lisa, I hope you miss him.
Yeah, it really does read like the storyline for an episode of, or a season of As the World Turns. But, for more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Robby Soave. He's a senior editor for Reason and author of the book Panic Attack, Young Radicals in the Age of Trump. Robby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to speak with you.
You wrote a piece the other day about the Inspector General's report. You come away with a bit of a different conclusion than former FBI Director Jim Comey, who suggested the report says that the FBI is exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah, the victory lap that James Comey and so many former FBI people, their cable news surrogates, et cetera, were taking the other day was just disgusting to me, because this report does not acquit the FBI whatsoever. The IG report, it acquits them of the most serious kind of conspiratorial, the political bias kind of narrative that some on the right have played into. But it still finds serious, grave wrongdoing on the part of the FBI, specifically with respect to Carter Page, whom they totally, wholly, improperly surveilled. That their warrant to look at him based on faulty, flawed information that they should have known was wrong, that they used in the renewal for the warrant over and over and over again. I mean, this is horrific incompetence. Maybe it's not malice, but it's incompetence. And I don't want an incompetent FBI. There's no way you could have any faith that the FISA kind of system is a check on abuse of power. After reading this report,
but
none whatsoever, and that's a terrifying thing.
Well, now that we know this information, is anyone's head going to roll because of it?
It certainly doesn't sound like it. It sounds like, because it sounds like everyone within the organization saying, "No, that's fine. Oh yeah, there's a couple of things we got to tweak here and there, but it's it's ultimately fine." And actually, Congress has not expressed much interest in doing kind of the institutional reform that is necessary, which is frustrating, because right now I would think you could maybe get it, because you have Republicans very fired up about, correctly fired up about the wrongful treatment of some of their people. And maybe you could get, we have to reform kind of like the Patriot Act to really get at this stuff. But and unfortunately it's reauthorized on a bipartisan basis every time it comes along. So I doubt it, but that's a shame.
Well, in addition to that, too, I mean, there's a lot of, as other people have pointed out, including David Harsanyi, we spoke with earlier in the show, all of these mistakes that were made, these oversights, the misstatements, the lack of corroborating information in FISA warrant applications, they were mistakes that were all made in one direction. So it's difficult to sort of credibly believe, just on a percentage basis, that if you're going to make that many mistakes over that much time with that many people involved, they would all be in one direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that. Certainly their errors were errors that helped them in their kind of unfounded, overzealous effort to find some kind of connection that didn't really exist between Russia and the Trump campaign, and also to demonstrate that, and knowing full well, I'm sure many of the people doing it, the political ramifications of that. This whole these were just good people doing their job narrative. At the very least, they were not doing their jobs very well, because can you imagine, this is the top law enforcement agency in the nation, and submitting false information. I mean, I'm a reporter. I can't submit if I get fired, or I would get in trouble if I submitted false information into a story and then did that 3 more times, which is in a sense what they did, and they're just trying to say, well, that's fine.
But it's like we're living in alternate universes, because you had Jim Baker, who's, I don't know what his job was at the FBI, but he was on CNN demanding that President Trump apologize to him because they weren't personally spying on him, but yet spying on his campaign.
It's going to be a cold day before Jim Baker gets that apology, but okay.
But how are we seeing everything so differently? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, there's some unfortunately some truth to this idea, and look, many on the right have taken this too far. That there's the deep state. There's a state within a state working to overthrow Trump. But there is some truth to the idea that bureaucracies just tend to grow on their own, and they become hostile to any oversight or any kind of agenda of anyone else, and they're self-sustaining, and they seek to preserve themselves. So I think certainly, the press release the FBI itself put out in response to this was insane. It mentioned that, well, this has not tarnished our brand. Our brand has never been tarnished or something in 111 years. Your brand? What is your brand? You're not a brand. In fact, you're supposed to be a law enforcement watchdog agency, and it is absolutely tarnished by this.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, it seems to me they're right. They're in the PR and crisis comm business more than they are the law enforcement business. And to the extent they're in the law enforcement business, and by the way, this also goes for the CIA under Brennan, who has also been found repeatedly to have said things that were untrue both during his tenure and since. You do have a culture problem here, at least among some senior leaders in some of these very powerful bureaucratic law enforcement and intelligence agencies. And that culture is the ends justify the means. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, it is. I'm a civil libertarian. I'm really concerned about spying on Americans, about that kind of stuff. And man, I would really like this to turn into universal outrage, because there are a lot of people probably who are being treated like Carter Page was, that we're not even going to ever know about, right? Because it doesn't connect to some larger national scandal. This is happening all the time. This has really shone a light on the FISA process. And I do not like what I see. I think most Americans should share in that outrage.
Well, and in addition to, I mean, the fact that FISA warrant applications are rarely rejected by the FISA courts, and yet the FBI still felt the need to cook their applications.
Right. I mean, yeah, they're never rejected, and they're thinking as well. We have to be, can't be too careful, because we really got to know if these are bad people. But it's obvious. The theory that Carter Page was a Russian asset was so ridiculous and so absurd and so undercut by so much other information that they just ignored. Right. You would not. You can't believe they act in good faith after watching what they did in this case.
Another trove of documents that are revealing. Washington Post obtaining these documents containing interviews and statements about our presence in Afghanistan for the last 2 decades. Since 2001, more than 775,000 U.S. troops have deployed to Afghanistan. 2,300 died there. Almost 21,000 were wounded in action. Those are DOD figures. And yet we have statements like this in these documents that were obtained by the Washington Post. Douglas Lute, a 3-star Army general, served as the White House Afghan war czar during both the Bush and Obama administrations, told government interviewers in 2015, "We were devoid of a fundamental understanding of Afghanistan. We didn't know what we were doing." He added, what are we trying to do here? We didn't have the foggiest notion of what we were undertaking. Boy, that's a remarkable statement to make in 2015, and by the way, with us still 5 years later having a military footprint there, but a remarkable statement. 14 years and thousands of lives lost into that campaign in Afghanistan, coming from the senior military leadership.
I mean, it's utterly horrible. It's a terrible indictment of the government, their advisors. I mean, everyone was wrong, and the support for invading Afghanistan was dramatically strong among the American people as well. But I mean, this has been a horrible mistake. We could have hunted bin Laden without overthrowing the entire country and plunging it into medieval chaos. In fact, bin Laden was in Pakistan, and so that this whole thing was sadly pointless, a massive waste and a cost in terms of money and of lives, and our purpose there is no clearer than it has ever been. It's a terrible. I truly hope we never make this mistake again. This mistake to commit ourselves to a disastrous foreign intervention with no clear objective or no way to achieve an objective. I mean, when I've talked to people who have actually been there, who have served or in some capacity, this is what they have told me over and over again: is that there is no hope for the kind of civilizational rapid change that we want to happen. It's not possible. We can't do it, and we should stop trying.
He is Robby Soave, senior editor for Reason.com, author of Panic Attack: Young Radicals in the Age of Trump. Robby, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Balance of Nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
As a retired RN, I know the importance of nutrition. I always have. Good food. It's actually healing you from the cellular level out. I'm living proof of that because for the past decade, I've been dealing with very painful brown spots on my forehead, and the brown spots, they're gone. There's only one thing that changed in my life, and that was taking Balance of Nature.
Experience the Balance of Nature difference for yourself.